Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to the free introduction to the Magdalene Heart Path online course. I am Mercedes Kirkel, and I am the facilitator and guide for this course. I am also the author of two books that were channeled by Mary Magdalene. Mary Magdalene Beckons was the first book, and the second book was Sublime Union. And this course is based on the first book, the teachings that Mary Magdalene gave in the first book, the one called Mary Magdalene Beckons. So what I'd like to do today is to give a little background about what the course is and an overview of what we cover in the course. And then from there, I want to do some live demonstrations of the process that we're learning in the course. So I just want to mention about that second part where I'm doing the live demonstrations. During that, I'm going to ask you for a situation. I'm going to ask for a volunteer, and we may have time. Hopefully we'll have time for more than one person. But a volunteer who would like to offer some situation in your life right now where you're feeling you're either struggling with judgment relative to the situation or some kind of emotional disturbance in the situation, some way that it's not resolved for you. And then we'll use that situation and apply Mary's process, and you'll get to see how it works. So the reason I'm mentioning that now is because I'd like everybody to be thinking about a situation in your life that you might want to offer, and if you're interested in being a volunteer. And that way, when we get to that part of the presentation, hopefully some people will have some situations in mind that they want to work with. So with that said, I will start to share. And I want to begin with a slide. So if you give me just a moment, I'm going to go to my slides here. So this is the course that we're talking about, the Magdalene Heart Path online course, and I'm the one leading it. And as I said, it is based on this book, Mary Magdalene Beckons, Join the River of Love. And briefly, this book was from channeled teachings that I received from Mary Magdalene in 2010. During that time, she came to me for a 1-month period. She came every day, and each day she downloaded a chapter of the book to me. And that became this book, along with my commentary on her messages. And the basic subject of the book is that she was talking about the divine feminine, and that it has come at this time to many, many people, including me, starting with this period of time, to be a leader of the movement in our world today of the coming into empowerment of the divine feminine for all of us. And in the book, she talked about what does that mean? And she talked about that when we're in our power and living fully in the divine feminine, we're able to live in our hearts. And of course, this is something that many of us really want, is to be able to live in our hearts. And most of us have the experience of doing this at times, and most of us have the experience of then falling out of that and not being able to maintain it. And for a lot of people, that's a frustration. They'd like to be able to have the sense that they're living from their hearts all the time. And what Mary says is that this has everything to do with becoming strong in the feminine, because the heart is the seat of the divine feminine for all of us. And so she said that in order to do that, there's 3 foundational areas that we all need to strengthen to be able to really assume our fullness of the divine feminine within ourselves. And those 3 areas are our relationship to our body, our relationship to our sexuality, and our relationship to our emotions. And if you think about it, these are the three areas that most people have the hardest time with. One, two, or all three of these: the body, sexuality, and emotions. And she said that that's not a coincidence. It's because the feminine has been so suppressed for most of us, as individuals and also just culturally for such a long time. And so this is the time where we're being called to change that, to come out of that. And she said of those three arenas, the one that could make the biggest difference for the most people is our relationship to our emotions, and specifically our relationship to our painful emotions. And what she said was that our emotions, including our painful emotions, were actually intended to be a help for us. They were intended to be our guide in reconnecting us to the divine when we've gotten disconnected. But she said most of us never learned that. And in fact, what we learned was the opposite. We learned that painful emotions, things like fear, sorrow, anger, are things to be avoided. And optimally, never to have these painful emotions. And if you do have them, to get out of them as fast as you can. And so what most of us have developed are avoidance strategies, where we have learned how to avoid these painful emotions. And she's not saying that you have to go out and try to be in pain or try to have painful emotions, but she says when they arise, they're there to help you. But you have to understand the process and become skilled. We actually have to develop our ability to make use of this help that will take us into back into God communion when we've gotten disconnected from our own divinity. And she said that more than anything else, this skill will allow us to live in our hearts the way that most of us would like to. So the primary teaching that she brought through in Mary Magdalene Beckens is her teaching about how to do this and her instruction to all of us. She did bring through some teaching about sexuality, but the primary bulk of her teaching on sacred sexuality is in the second book, in Sublime Union. And relative to our relationship with our body, she said, most of us know what we need to do in relationship to our body. We may not be doing it or have completed it yet, but that wisdom is by and large out there. She said the one area that most of us do have challenges relative to our relationship with our body is that most of us carry shame relative to our body. And that definitely overlaps with the whole emotional teaching that she's giving in Mary Magdalene Beckens. But she said relative to our body and relative to our sexuality, most of us have healing to do relative to shame in those areas. But the primary thing that she focused on, again, in this book was emotions. So what happened for me after I published the book, which came out in 2012, is I started doing sessions with clients, and they would come and they would say, oh, I read this book. It was incredible. I loved it. It changed my life. And of course, I was thrilled to hear that. But then when I would start working with them on some area of challenge that they were dealing with, and I would ask them to apply the process, what I saw was they didn't really know how to translate what Mary Magdalene said in the book into their own life and into their own practice so that they actually could make use of it when they needed it in their life. And so out of that, I realized that people needed help, that the book was this valuable resource, but people needed a bridge to understand how to make use of the book, how to really integrate it in their life. And so out of that, I developed this course called the Magdalene Heart Path online course. And what I've seen since I started the course is that it has helped people immeasurably. And I'm really, really happy to say that the intention that I had in creating this course has really been accomplished. That what I've seen is that when people take the course and go through it, by the end of the course, they have a whole different relationship to not only their emotions, but their spirituality altogether. And it has really, really changed people and really opened up new possibilities for people. And in general, the people who take this course are people who've done a great deal of spiritual growth work. They're not newcomers to the spirituality scene. They're people who have really been with it a long time, done a lot, grown a lot, and oftentimes are still looking for more because they're not where they really want to be yet. And so I have loved working with the people who've taken this course, and I've been thrilled to see the difference it's made in people's lives. So with that, what I want to do is talk about what the course actually covers. So I'm going to go back to another slide here, and let me move my, give me just a moment here. Okay, so what the course actually covers, there's 6 weeks to the course, and these are the different topics, and I'm going to briefly go over what each topic includes. The first week, we look at blame and judgments, because these are the two things, the two number one things that keep us up in our mind and out of our heart, that keep us protected and out of our feelings. And we go into this very deeply, but in a very, very practical way where people can start to see, wow, I am actually making judgments all the time in ways that I didn't even realize. And for a lot of people, that's an amazing wake up. They are shocked. For a lot of people, it's discouraging because they thought they were beyond this. But this material makes it really clear that most of us are deeply ingrained in this way of thinking, because this is the way our whole culture works. It's the way our language works. It's the way most of us were taught, and taught to survive in a very fundamental way. So we go right to the root of that and take a look at how deeply judgmental thinking tends to be interwoven into our consciousness for most of us, and what we can do to change that and to take that away. So that's what we look at the first week. The second week, we build on that with what's called your body emotion pathway to God. And this is what's underneath the judgmental thinking and the blame. When we take that away, it's like removing a covering, and what's underneath is our body and our emotions. What's actually the key to our inner world, in our inner life. And so it's, in some ways, it's like the blame and the judgments are protecting us. They're standing guard. And when we allow them to back off, thank you very much, we don't need that kind of help right now, we are able to enter into ourselves and to start to find out what's going on with us. And our great help in doing this is looking at our body and our emotions. So that's what we do in the second week. And for many people, this is a new arena, because we haven't been deeply, deeply supported in really knowing what's going on with us, especially in terms of the guidance we get through our body and through our emotions, which I have found to be the most dependable guidance we have as far as what is really our truth, what's really who we are, and what's going on with us at the core of our being. So that's what we connect with in the second week. On the third week, we take it to a deeper level, because what we learn is that the awareness that we get through our body, through our feelings, is pointing us to something deeper. And that something deeper is our inner divinity. And what we find out in week 3 is that all the feelings that we're having, including our painful feelings, the ones that most of us have spent our life trying to get away from, are actually trying to help us to stay connected fully to our inner divinity. And that they are not only showing us when we have gotten disconnected, but they are our very specific guides to how to reconnect. And that's what we learn in week 3, is what is the connection between emotions and ourselves as being divine beings. And this is the part that also many of us learn. Not only did we not learn what's going on with us, what we're feeling, but if we did learn that, we generally didn't learn that feelings aren't the end. We don't stop with feelings, that feelings are meant to take us somewhere else. And this is one of the reasons that people have gotten this message and this programming that you shouldn't go into feelings, because they've had the experience of feelings not leading them someplace where they wanted to be. It led them to a place of unhappiness, or maybe not feeling safe, and they didn't know how to make use of feelings for guiding them to something really valuable. So that's one of the things that's really unique about this program, is it's taking feelings to a place that most people just aren't aware of and don't know is a possibility. So that's what we learn about in the third week. Then in the fourth week, we make the shift out of our inner world of feelings, sensations, and our inner divinity, and we go back out into what you could call the outer world. How do we take this into the outer world to create the world and the life that we want? And this is where we are becoming creators, and what I like to say is co-creators, because we are learning how to be connected to ourselves and our own heart and create from that place, but also how to connect to the hearts of others, and how to have our creation come from this fuller connection of not only ourselves, but everyone involved. So this is where we're looking at, what does that really mean to be a co-creator, and what are the real practical steps for doing that? And one of the things I love about this program, one of the things I love about Mary Magdalene, is she is so practical. She is very down to earth. She's brilliant, so insightful, but she also is very practical. I like to say, just like a woman, in that she wants us to not just have philosophy or ideas. She wants us to have actual techniques that will change our life. And that's what I have seen that this does, that these things actually are life-changing for the people who engage and learn this process. So these are the steps to really, when we're in week 4, the practical techniques that can allow us to become the kind of creators that we want to be, and to create the kind of world that we want to have. So then in week 5, we look really deeply into compassion and the heart of compassion. And I like to use that word heart, because this course is all about connecting with the heart, is that you're making that heart connection with others. Through connecting with yourself first, it becomes a natural outgrowth of that to start to connect with others at the heart. But again, it's not just a wish or a hopeful thing. Oh, I hope if I feel loving that way I'll be able to connect with others in a loving way. This is actually very practical in terms of being a technique that you can practice to actually make heart connection with other people. So that's what we focus on in the 5th week. And then the 6th week is the integration of all of it. How do we use all of these steps of these previous 5 weeks to live from our heart and to relate from our heart to everyone else? And what I've seen is that it really works. At the end of the 6 weeks, people have amazing tools available to them for doing things that they really want to be doing and making changes that they really want to be able to make in their life. So that's our process that we go through in the course. And so we do these 6 weeks. And what it consists of is that each week we have a recorded presentation, which is about an hour long, and you listen to that on your own timing, preferably early in the week, because each presentation has some practice suggestions for you to engage throughout the rest of the week. So I encourage people to listen to it as early as possible so you have time to be engaging those. And then on Saturday mornings, well, it's not morning for everyone, depending on where you're living, but on Saturdays, we have 6 live coaching sessions, each one based on the material in the presentation for that week. So you listen to the presentation, you do the practices through the week on your own, and then you come to the live coaching session, and you have an opportunity to practice this with my coaching and my help and my feedback, which I have found to be really valuable for people to make this shift and to really get how to do this. So we do that for 6 weeks, and then during the 6th week, everyone also gets a private session with me, and that's part of the class. And so you get a 1-hour private session where I coach you one-on-one on applying all these principles. And what I've seen is it's like a magic formula. It works. By the end of the 6 weeks, I'm amazed at what's happened and where people are at. So that's the overview of what's involved. And I just briefly want to say, one thing that I meant to say at the beginning and I forgot is that I do have a special offer for everyone, and I will be going over that at the very end of this introduction, which will be probably in about an hour or so. No, about a half an hour. So I invite everybody to stay to the end so that you get to have this free gift from me. So I'm glad I remembered to say that now. But just to let you know, if you're interested, and I hope everybody is interested in registering for the course, I'll be sending you an email after we do this free intro, and there will be a link in the email for registering for the course. But you can also go to my website, which is mercedeskirkel.com. If you click on the tab at the top that says calendar, and then you go on the calendar page to the Magdalene Heart Path course, there's a button or a link that says to register for the course, click here. So that's how you can sign up, and wanted to make sure everybody knows about that. So with that, I'm going to turn off the slides. And first, I just want to see, is there any questions about anything that I said? And if there is, please unmute yourself and say your name, and I'd love to hear your question.
Hi, Mercedes. Can you hear me?
I can. And who is this?
Hi, this is Jenny.
Hi.
Hi. I just had a question on when you were going through each of the weeks, and you had, I think, week 4 was co-creator.
Mm-hmm.
Is that like, do you see that as entering into a co-creator relationship with God? Or how do you, I guess, who do you see the co-creation activity happening with?
Um, Ultimately, it's with yourself. But from my point of view, at that point, if we're doing this practice, we have access to being connected through ourselves to God. So I leave that as a personal choice to how people see that you might see it as your creation, you might see it as God creating through you, you might see it as both. And I support any of those ways. And I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, that happens.
Did that answer your question, or was there more that
Yeah,
you
no,
want?
that's helpful. I wasn't sure if you had sort of a specific type of co-creation relationship in mind, but it sounds like you take a pretty open approach to it.
Yes. And to me, part of what Mary is presenting in Mary Magdalene Beckons, and really in all the work that she has brought through me, she is talking about our spiritual evolution into the higher dimensions. And she talks about our next step being moving into the fourth dimension. And that what creates the dimension that we're living in is our consciousness.
Right.
And so, what this course is really about is about changing our consciousness from a consciousness that creates the third dimension, which most of us are appearing here in the third dimension right now. So, to some extent or other, we are still coming from that consciousness into the consciousness that would create the fourth dimension. And a part of that is shifting into there's many parts to what that fourth dimensional consciousness is, but part of it is that it has a lot to do with coming from the place of being a creator as opposed to a victim. And part of that initial step that we do in week 1, that is a big part of what holds us living here in our minds, is relating to the world through judgment and through blame. Yes. And that's very connected to victim consciousness. And so when we shift out of that and shift into becoming who we are, and ultimately who we are through connected to our inner divinity, we're accessing the power of creation. And that is a shift into fourth dimensional consciousness to do that. And one of the things that characterizes the third dimension is the idea of separation and the sense of separation. It's much more than an idea. It's part of the consciousness that we carry in the 3D, is this feeling of being separate. And part of that feeling is separate from God. And what most of us have done is we have ascribed this idea of creation as that's what God does. That's what that other being does. And so part of this shift is connecting through ourselves with God and learning that we are creators, that we are creating all the time, and that we can be in choice about what we want to be creating. Right. And that there's tools for that there's skills for that, there's learning involved in that. So all of that is part of what we look at in that fourth week.
Okay, great. That's helpful. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Any other questions? And again, you'll probably need to unmute yourself to ask a question. Okay, then let's go on. And I want to shift now into the second part of this intro, which is to do some demonstration of this process with people. And we'll see if we have time. We'll start with one person and see if we have time for more than one. So what I want to do is ask for a volunteer who has some situation in their life that they're open to sharing, that where you're struggling with judgment or conflict, difficult feelings, some challenge in some way or other. So if you are open to being a volunteer, please unmute yourself and say your name and let me know. And this doesn't have to be some, big situation in your life. It can be a very ordinary situation, something that happened, recently that just struck a chord somehow or other, whatever. Any brave person who's open to sharing something from your life that we could do a demonstration with?
I'll volunteer, Mercedes.
Thank you.
I was just trying to think of how to formulate the issue or the question most succinctly. So, ready for me to lay it on you?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay. So something I noticed I am struggling with lately, like the last few months, is my husband's relationship with his parents has been fairly tumultuous, and there's been a lot of healing that's had to take place over a number of years. And while they're rebuilding their relationship, I'm noticing a slight change in him. Like, his anxiety goes up, and just the way little behaviors are a little different. So as I'm kind of observing this and trying to be as supportive as possible, I'm also noticing where I get into a very protective stance for my husband, because I want to say, like, well, don't be around your parents as much. I'm thinking, gosh, I can't do that. Those are his parents, and whatever that relationship is, it is. And yet so there's just something hanging out here for me that I'm thinking I could almost see my path. Like, I'm at this turning point where I can go into a very protective stance, or I have to just accept it and allow his journey. And yet I'm kind of struggling with this. I want to make sure that I'm open and as loving as possible with that. And yet also being aware of what are my boundaries or what are my values, and just kind of like this little mishmash of things that are at play right now for me. Is that helpful? Is that a scenario that?
Very much so, and thank you for offering that. And one of the things that this points to, which is another aspect of our 3D consciousness, is that very often when we get into challenging situations, we have the sense that we have two choices kind of pulling us in two different directions. Like, either I should be the protector, or I should back off and do nothing, and this is his, it's not mine. And we get into this either or situation. Mm-hmm. And that's very typical. And so that's part of what I like about what you just presented, because let's see where it goes, but I think this might lead us to a different place.
Okay.
So thank you.
Yes.
So the first thing that I want to ask is, in doing this, what's the most helpful is that we want to isolate one particular incident. When we're dealing with a situation where things have been happening over time and there's many things that have occurred and it's kind of a pattern, what I would like you to do is pick out one particular time when this happened, so that we can just work with that actual event. And it's good if it's a time that still has some energy for you. Maybe, there's still a charge there. Like when I think about that, that's one of those times that got me.
Okay. All right. I have it.
Okay. So in as simply as possible, what happened in that particular occasion?
No, and so this is more of I think the most exchange was between his mom and himself, just a conversation they had, where it felt like she wasn't listening. It's all about her, right? So she wanted to go away for a few days with us, which is lovely that's taking place. But when we had said, well, I have to work in the morning, so let's kind of figure this out. She says, okay, this is great. Calls back within a half hour, says, all right, we already made the hotel reservation, so we're going to come over to your house, and then we're going to take off in the morning, and the last ferry leaves, because we're going to an island. We're like, wait a minute, we can't, we just can't make these plans, but she just won't hear, and it feels like it's all about her. And so I was kind of the observation, and this was really the conversation between my husband and his mom, but he got really upset with it, so which makes me then upset,
Okay, so let's see if we can get even down to the moment. Okay. And the moment we're looking for in this particular scenario is the moment where a feeling came up in you. And the moment before you didn't have that feeling, and suddenly that moment you did. And that's what we're looking for, that moment in time where that was it, where it started. That's where the feeling came up.
Okay. Yeah. It's when he's relaying the conversation to me within a matter of moments, and he said, all right, well, we have, Mom already set reservations for, these dates. And it was like at that moment I realized, there's just logistically no way that we can honor that.
Okay, so it was when you heard him say, Mom already made reservations.
Yes.
Yeah. Great. So this is the first way that we use our emotions. We use our emotions to get clear, what was that moment in time where something happened, which is really valuable information. And what gives us the crystal clear accuracy around it is just look to the feelings. The feelings tell you when was that moment where something happened. So sounds like the moment was when you heard your husband say, Mom's already made reservations.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
So the next step is when you heard that, what was your inner experience? What came up for you in terms of feelings or in terms of physical sensations?
I'm trying to articulate it. Kind of almost at the same time, like a flabbergasted, and a feeling like, here we go again. Nothing's changed, Hold on, let me get to it more. It's wow, how do I describe it? So the feeling was more like no one else mattered. So let me still distill it. I didn't matter at all. So like I'm gonna say it's almost like this, like a sucking sound came out of like the incident where it's like, oh yeah, it's just all about what she wants, and forget about anybody else.
Okay. So not to say this in a way of putting you down, making you wrong. This is the very typical thing that most of us do, is when something happens, we go into thoughts about it. And what I'm hearing the thoughts was, nothing's ever going to change, same old, same old. Mm-hmm. And I don't matter. It's all about her.
Mm-hmm.
And I did hear a feeling, and it's a feeling I don't hear very often, which to me is really fun. I heard the feeling flabbergasted.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I definitely count that as a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And can you feel the difference between flabbergasted, how that's like an experience that you are having? Wow, flabbergasted, versus here we go again. This is all about her. I don't matter.
Yeah.
That's the tape
Yeah.
spinning.
Yes. Yeah, the feeling happened first, and then it's as if my mind was trying to make sense of it, and that's where I could
Yes.
thought.
And that mind trying to make sense of it is one of the ways that we have learned, many of us, to get out of the feeling, to save ourselves in a certain way, to fix it, to understand it, to fix it, to make it go away, and to protect ourselves.
Okay.
So what I want to do is I want to take those thoughts and I want to translate them into feelings.
Okay.
So let's take it one at a time. The first thought was, this is never going to change. It just goes on and on and on.
Mm-hmm.
What's the feeling underneath that thought?
Gosh, the first word that came to mind was like a bit of despair.
Despair, yes. All right.
Is there anything else? So it's kind of losing some of my words because despair just feels like it's so big right now.
And maybe that really covers it. Let's go on and we'll see, because the others might flesh out other feelings.
Okay.
So the second one was, this is all about her.
Mm-hmm.
What's the feeling underneath that thought? This is all about her.
It feels angry.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Could we change that to, I felt angry?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I felt angry.
I was guessing that was the case. Okay. So anger.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last thought there was, I don't matter.
That felt lonely, and the word belittling comes up.
So belittling is what somebody else does to you.
Right?
Someone is belittling you. What feeling would you have?
Less than.
So less than is a judgment. It's a measuring in your mind.
Okay.
So if you're telling yourself, I'm less than, what is the feeling associated with that?
Wow. I'd come back to lonely. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
No, I mean, I feel like there might be something else there, but right now it's maybe the best way to describe it.
Can I check one out here?
Oh, yes, please.
How about hurt?
Yes. Thank you. Why didn't that pop into my mind? But yes.
Okay. So here is what I am tracking of the feelings, and please let me know if I've missed anything here. Flabbergasted.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's one I forgot in there. The second one, I want to say angry, but I think there was one before that.
I said despair.
Oh, despair. Thank you very much. Flabbergasted, despair, angry, lonely, hurt.
Yes. Yeah. Wow, that's quite a cocktail.
Yes, and it's rich.
Yeah.
That's your rich inner world that you've connected with through those feelings. Let me read that again. Flabbergasted, despair, angry,
Mm-hmm.
lonely, hurt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that nails it. Yeah.
Wonderful. Now, what is most often the case in situations that have a whole combination of feelings going on is that there's one or two that really have the energy.
Mm-hmm.
So, what I would like to do is read the list again and see if there's one or two that jump out for you as, yeah, those are the biggies.
Okay.
I'm going to read it again and then tell me if you notice that.
All right.
Flabbergasted. Let me start even with the situation. When I heard my husband say she'd already made the reservations,
Mm-hmm.
I felt flabbergasted, despair, angry, lonely, hurt.
Flabbergasted for sure really pops out, and kind of like Wayne's, like lonely and angry almost feel the same. I think lonely.
Mm-hmm. Great,
Mm-hmm.
great. Okay, so let's work with those two.
Okay.
Flabbergasted and lonely.
All right.
So, what I want to suggest is that these feelings are pointing to some part of you, some beautiful part of you that's not getting fulfilled by this event of hearing that she already made the reservation. And the feelings are giving you a clue about what part of you that is.
Mm.
So I want to take these one at a time, and I think maybe we should start with flabbergasted since that was the first one that came up. So, what part of you was not fulfilled that this feeling of being flabbergasted is pointing to? Some beautiful part of you.
Mm. Mm.
What were you wanting that didn't happen? Is another way of saying it.
The word just connection kind of just popped into my mind. So it feels like, I think what's happening there is, I say it's the exchange, the dialogue between what works. Like we were narrowing down on where to go for this weekend getaway that she wanted to do, and I guess there's an expectation too and a desire to like let's create this together. What would make sense for everybody, and if just like it felt like she just took it and run with it. She heard the first thing she wanted to hear, and then just did it. And I thought, well, that doesn't feel like we're creating. Like we're not really going to be together for the weekend to all be together. We're just doing this so then she can tell people that she went away with the kids.
Okay.
That's probably too much there, but sorry.
So I want to get a little bit more specific with this. I'm wondering if, and I'm thinking of a few different things it might be. So I want to make some guesses, and they could be totally wrong. So feel free to just say yes or no. You don't have to explain. You don't have to try to make it right if it's not really a fit. Just, yeah, it was that. No, not really that. Okay. Real simple. So I'm wondering if what you were really wanting, longing for was cooperation.
Yes. Wow, that just really landed for me. Yeah.
Yay! All right. Cooperation is one aspect of our human nature, something that we all share, is what we could call a need, a valuing of cooperation. And in that moment, that when you heard she made the reservations, it sounds like that feeling of being flabbergasted is because you were wanting cooperation. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. What a great way to distill it. That's it.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so now I want to go to the other feeling that you pointed out as being really strong, which was lonely. And and let's see what that's pointing to, because usually when we have different feelings coming up, each one is pointing to a different aspect of our inner divinity that's not getting fulfilled. So in this situation, when you heard she made the reservations, what was that loneliness pointing to that you were wanting that wasn't getting fulfilled?
Mm. Hmm. Good one. What was it pointing to? I feel like there's something related to connection or wanting to feel connected.
That is
Partner.
exactly what I was thinking of, was that's where the connection was. And you, when I feel this, I feel there's a link between being lonely and wanting connection. So I trust that. It's like your feeling is pointing to, this is what goes with loneliness. When you feel lonely, this is one of the natural things that you're longing for, is connection. Yeah.
Okay.
So what I'm hearing, and I'm going to put this together now just for you to feel into it and see if this feels like a fit. When you heard that she'd already made the reservations, you felt flabbergasted because you were wanting cooperation, and you felt lonely because you were wanting connection.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's it. Yeah. It makes all those feelings seem, I don't know, it makes more sense now, what was going on.
Yes. Yes. Like a sense of kind of settling into it. There's more like peace and restedness with the situation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I would say that's because you've reconnected with yourself.
All right. I'm getting it.
So I'd like to take this a little further if you're open to it.
Sure.
Okay. So what I want to do now is just look at these qualities of yourself, your inherent divine nature, and these two particular facets of it, of cooperation and connection. And what I want to ask you to do is to connect, to go inside and find the place in you that knows what it's like to actually have what you were longing for, to have the kind of connection and cooperation that you really would have liked. And I want to suggest that that lives in you, because otherwise you can't miss it. You can't miss something that you don't know what it is to have it. Okay. So I want to invite you to go into your inside and find where it is in you that lives, that fullness of cooperation and connection, and give yourself that.
Okay. Okay. It's interesting. I'm actually having that physical, like a response to that, just thinking about it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Feeling it much more, definitely in my heart, and kind of, like that, like the gut area as well, like feeling pretty grounded with it as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that feeling in your heart, is it a feeling of your heart opening or connecting to your heart?
It is. It feels like there's a depth there and a resonance, that earlier, just describing the situation, I couldn't feel that at all. So it's, as it's opened up, but it was almost like before I could almost really feel the protection over my heart.
Yes. And so what Mary says about this is that what we're suffering are not the outer events of our life. We're affected by the outer events of life. It's not that we're immune. It's not that we're these isolated entities that don't experience things. We absolutely do. But what we suffer from is that they shock us into disconnecting from our own divinity. And it's our own disconnection from our divinity is what we're really suffering. And when we have these emotions, these feelings come up, they're pointing us to the path of reconnecting, which is what you just did through following that pathway of feeling. So I want to ask you to do one last step.
Okay.
And that is to do your best to stay connected to this place in you that knows the already fulfilled state of connection and cooperation.
Mm-hmm.
So staying connected to that as best you're able, and then bring in that moment when you heard that she'd already made the reservation, and see if you can hold both at the same time.
Yes, I can.
And what do you experience when you do that?
So, and this might be me going back into my head a little bit, but I just had this image of, like, hearing that message and just getting very curious to say, oh, hold up, maybe we missed a step along the way. Let's, and basically inviting her into conversation, honoring what she really wants to get out of the day, but also being true to myself.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Anything you'd like to share about what it was like to go through that process?
It, as much as I like to think that I'm in touch with my emotions and don't fly off the handle very easily or anything like that, this was pretty powerful because it helped me articulate what those feelings were. Like I had not considered when I felt flabbergasted or when I felt lonely, like there's something else there other than just those are the emotions. So I could call it out and I could get that far on my own a little bit, but I didn't know how to turn it. I didn't know how to open up my heart for that, other than just saying, just open up your heart, which is kind of hard to do if I can't get to the root of what it really is.
Right. Yes.
That's powerful.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, would anybody else like to share anything or ask any questions about the process you just observed? And again, you'll need to unmute yourself to do that.
Hello?
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Who's this?
This is Mary.
Hi.
Hi, I didn't know how to unmute myself.
Okay. I think you're unmuted.
You can hear me.
I can hear you intermittently.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, but it's coming and going. So let's give it a try and see if we can do it.
Well, I don't know how to, I think I've done the unmute thing.
Yeah.
I just seem sure. Can you hear me? I don't know how to unmute it other than hit that button
No,
on the.
you're unmuted now.
Okay, thank you. In your book, the book that I read, it talks about, going into the feeling and then finding the divine quality.
Mm-hmm.
I have a really, really, really hard time with finding the divine quality. I'm working on the emotional body a lot, and I feel the feminine path is a lot about experiencing and healing the emotional body to the divine feminine. That's but I get frustrated with some of the conversation that you've had about getting out of victim, and you feel victimized, and you feel, there's a lot of popularity around, well, that's just your story. You're in victim, get out of it. So that's kind of the context of my question. But specifically, I have a lot of fear around money, survival, financial survival. And I live on an extremely low income. And I'm constantly in fear of survival and how I can afford to be alive and live.
Mary?
Literally. So,
I'm struggling to hear what you're saying. I'm getting part of it, but I'm not getting all of it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn off your video because what I found is that that often helps the sound quality. So if you could summarize what you just said again, I would really appreciate it because I didn't get all of it. I only got some of it.
okay, I don't know how, I didn't know, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Perfectly?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll just cut to the bottom line. The thing about moving out of victim consciousness and getting out of your story sometimes feels like a harsh judgment on the inner child and on the process of healing. And so one of the things I'm struggling with in your teaching is I have a lot of fear coming up around financial survival and being able to
A lot of fear around what?
financial survival. Can you hear me?
Yes.
And being able to survive and literally survive, after rent's paid. And can you still hear me?
Uh-huh.
And I have a lot of reactivity around this whole thing of getting out of victim. And I feel, I've lost a lot of money financially through bad investments and where I've been betrayed. But it's hard to let go of that. It's hard to let go of a lot of the emotional response I have to all of that. But facing forward, I just don't see how I'm going to survive financially. And there's so much fear on a daily basis, a lot of worry, a lot of stress. And I don't know how to go into the fear. I can go into the fear and feel it. It's very tangible in my body, the worry, the concern, the fear. How am I going to survive? How am I going to feed myself? How am I going to have gas in my car? All that real basic stuff. Dental care. And when I hear the teachings about, getting out of victim consciousness and having lost a lot of money through betrayal, it's not so easy. And I would just like to work with the vibration of fear around financial survival. And I can tangibly feel the fear, the worry, the concern, the sleeplessness, the insomnia, the constant stress and struggle. I'm aware of that and I feel it in my body. I don't see how you get to the divine quality in that.
Okay. So there's a lot there. This is a particular way of, it's a process. This is a process. And for some people, I have seen that it can be challenging to let go of familiar models for handling life situations. So what I say to people who are in that situation is, if you feel moved to try this process, I recommend give it a try. See what happens. And see if you like the results. In my experience, I have seen that people do like the results. I've seen that people feel more empowered, more clear from doing this, more resolved. But it does require a willingness to let go of it's kind of like jumping off the cliff. You know, you have to jump before you find out what's there. And maybe you're not going to jump off the cliff forever. Maybe you're just going to jump off the cliff for, you know, the space of time of checking it out and seeing if it's right for you. And fortunately, it's not a literal physical cliff, so I don't predict that you're going to be in any, you know, bodily harm from doing it. But mentally, it requires letting go of old approaches. And generally, people only do that if either they're convinced that their old approaches aren't working for them anymore, or if they have a sense that a new approach could work even better. And that's for you to decide. That's for you to figure out if it's worth it to you.
I don't feel like you answered my question.
Okay, can you summarize in a couple of sentences what your question is? Because I'm not sure that I heard it.
I hear you have a process. I've read the book. I'm reading it over and over. I have the experience of fear. I go into the feeling of fear. I'm feeling terrified. I'm feeling I don't know how I'm going to survive financially. I don't know how I'm going to have enough money to live.
So I've heard this part really clearly. So what's the question?
The question is, I'm in the fear. How do I get to the divine quality that you talk about in the book? And you, if you say it's a process, I just feel like it's this process, and take this class, and it's a process. I don't have the money for the class. I want to know how I get to the divine quality through the fear. When I'm feeling the fear, I am feeling the fear. That's not an issue for me. I am in it. So how do you get to the divine quality?
Well, that's exactly what I do with people in the class. I teach you how to do that. I can't do that now. This is a 6-week process. I can't teach you that whole process right now. What I could do is give you a taste, and that's hopefully what you got from, seeing this and seeing this is a taste for you to understand. And, I do this with people in private sessions. If you were to do a private session with me, then, I would work with you one-on-one, and we could work with your situation. But I think what you're asking is beyond the scope of this introduction. But, if you want to write to me and we could, handle this one-on-one, that might be a more appropriate vehicle for that.
So if I'm in the fear, and I'm reading your book, for people that are reading your book and trying to apply the principles from reading your book, it talks about going into the divine quality underneath the fear.
So, Mary?
Yeah.
I'm not going to go any further with this right now. I appreciate your question, and I'm open to you, emailing me. Contact me through the website, and we can talk about this more, because it sounds like this is, a situation that's beyond the scope of this introduction.
Okay.
Thanks. So, we're close to the end of the time that I have allocated for this, so I want to go back to my slides. And give me a minute here to get this up. And I want to get to what I want to get to is the gift that I wanted to offer you. But before I do that, I want to say that that there are two things about this particular class that's starting. The class is starting in 2 weeks. It's going to be September. You know, I thought I had. Oh, here we go. It's in a week. The first recorded presentation is going to be available August 26th, and then the first group coaching call will be Saturday, September 2nd, and then go through October 7th. There are two particular things that I want to say about this particular series that I'm offering. Oh, and I also want to ask that everybody mute themselves because we are getting some feedback, and I don't somebody. So let's figure out where. If everybody could just check and make sure that you're muted. Aha, thank you. Whoever just turned off their sound, thank you. So, yeah, the first thing I want to say is that, and we mentioned this before we started the formal presentation, is that this course is part of the foundation for the France retreat that happens in the summer. Next summer in 2018, it's going to be in July. The dates are July 17th to the 28th, and that also is on the website. If you're interested in joining us for the Magdalene retreat in France, which is an amazing, amazing trip, I highly recommend taking this course now because the course is included with the retreat, and it's the foundation of what we're doing on the retreat, is engaging this process together as well as doing this spiritual pilgrimage to these sites that are deeply connected to Mary Magdalene in France. So that's one reason that I would highly urge people to take this, is if you're at all considering coming in on France next year, this is a great opportunity to start to learn this process and start to engage it and integrate it. The second thing that I want to mention is that this may be the last time that I am going to be teaching this series live. In the future, it might be that I'm going to be offering this through a recorded learning module kind of model based on, you know, having taught it live many times in the past, and I have recordings, and that's what I'll be offering to people, is a course that people can take as a pre-recorded course. But this series I am doing live. I will be offering the live coaching sessions. So I encourage people, if you feel like you would like to learn this, that this is a great opportunity to take it now while it's still being offered as a live course with the coaching sessions and with the private session with me included in the course. And to support people in doing that, I am offering this gift, which is that if you do register for the class this weekend, that I'm offering a $50 savings on the fee of the course. That normally it's $365, and if you register by midnight on Sunday, that's going to go down to $315. And the way that you do that is when you get to the registration page, there's something that says promo code, and if you type in free intro, all in caps, all one word, that's how you get the discount. And that's only going to be available until Sunday midnight. So if you're interested in taking the course, if you want to take it live with me, if you think you might be coming to France, or if you just want to get a good deal, I strongly recommend sign up this weekend, and I would love to have you in the course. So I will be sending you an email that has the link for doing that. And you also can do it through the website. And let me go through that pathway again. Is if you do it through the website, you go to mercedeskirkel.com, you click on calendar, you scroll down to the course, and then click where it says to register for the course, click here. And then again on the registration page where it says enter the promo code, you enter free intro. All one word, all caps. So that's my offering, and I hope I see all of you in the course. And before we close, just any last questions that anyone has, I'm open to hearing questions. So if you have a question, feel free to unmute yourself. All right, sounds like, oh, anything?
Sorry, just I turned the video on. No questions, but thank you so much for putting this together. It really helped me understand a bit more what the course was containing. So thank you.
I'm very glad to hear that. Thank you so much. And there's actually another recording of a similar free intro. If you go to the website and up at the top it says courses, and then if you, there's a drop-down menu and it says Magdalene Heart Path course. If you click on that, at the bottom of that page, there's also another free intro from a previous time. And there's some more situations in there where I'm demonstrating the process. So if you want to see more, that's available too. So I hope I see you in the class. And thank you all very much for coming. Thank you for your interest in this process. Thank you for your interest in growing and evolving both as an individual and also evolving our world. Thank you all very much. So what I always like to do on the end of these calls is to invite everybody to unmute yourself and we'll share a goodbye. So feel free to unmute yourself and bye for now.
Bye, Mercedes.
Bye. So good to see you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.